Alright, howdy, Beefalo Bart here, and welcome. This is going to start kicking off a series of live broadcasts that I plan on doing on a pretty regular basis. And starting off with every Sunday morning, I would like to do the Sunday services, Coffee with Bart. And, okay, lack of a better name, then it's not going to be religious. Sorry. It's going to be just general, and we'll cover little things like gaming, game development, the roadblocks and problems you run into when creating games and so forth, and just general stuff. If you're looking for content based off of the Paragon project, then I do suggest you check in with Brain Dead Games and their Discord channel or Reddit for Project Cog stuff. Again, this isn't going to be one game or any game specific content, so if that's what you're looking for, sorry, but oh well. With the fact that this is going to be Coffee with Bart, and there'll be a different version of it for different days of the week, and we'll try to make a regularly scheduled broadcast, not just Sunday morning only, but I'll try to do a show for a good general time frame that will get more people being able to watch. Plus, they're going to be available to watch afterwards. So if you can't make it, then at least you'll be able to catch on the ability to come back and watch it later. So let's get into it. There's something to consider when you're thinking about video games. Whether you want to create a game or don't want to create a game, the idea of a game is meant to be entertainment. It's supposed to be fun. And yes, I'm going to use a blank, empty project with nothing in it, specifically so that it's non-biased towards any other game. And I'm using the Unreal 4 engine on version 4.19.0, which I like, but it's got its own quirks and bugs versus 4.18.3 that I was using. But anyway, the idea of a video game is supposed to be for fun and for entertainment. So if you're not having fun playing a game, and you're playing a game that's from a company that does not listen to its community, it can be rather disheartening. And, really and truly, you want that game to be what you want it to be, and it can't always be exactly the way you want it. But there are some things to consider when you're actually playing a game of what are the core mechanics, how does it work, how do you get something to do what you want it to do. And I'm going to start off with showing some things here in, yeah, I know, I got to change the thumbnail. I will come up with some classy image of something related on what it actually is. That the thumbnail that I've been using is an older one that I was using from another game-based show. I'm going to show some of the basic steps that I do to get prepared for creating. Hey, dude. Nice to see you again. Creating a game is all about setting up the scene. Each scene and each part of a game is like watching a movie where you're actually part of the movie. You have some control of what's going on the screen. But getting that, wow. Zippy, I'll get you some workload on COG stuff here this afternoon, or here in a few minutes after the broadcast. But a character, like in this instance, is a third-person character. You can see this is a third-person example in here. The character is for a third person, and what that really means is you're looking, if you notice the camera here is looking at the back of the player. So if you were to actually play this, you're actually looking at the outside of your player and getting its view that way. Whereas a first-person view would actually mean that you're looking through the eyes of the character, as opposed to looking back at the character itself. And there's pros and cons to both. But if I wanted to go from a third-person view to a first-person view, there's a couple things that we can do. And one of the things I like to do is actually create a switch for either the player to manually switch between, or if I'm going from unarmed to using a rifle, I want to be able to use that rifle in a way that I'm looking down the sights or I'm looking over the sights, so I'm actually using the weapon. So the first example of things that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this third person view, and I'm going to create a key binding so we can hit a key and change from the third person view to a first person view. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and take our example dummy right here, and I'm going to throw them in the garbage can. I'm going to take this little floating thingy here, get rid of that, and get rid of that. So we'll leave the rest of the stuff here. So the first thing you end up having to do, and this is also not really to be a tutorial, but not a tutorial at the same time. It's also so people can get an understanding of what it takes to create elements for a game. So inside the project settings, we need to create an input. So to be able to get something to happen, you have to have some form of input. And in this case, we can do an action mapping. And I'm going to create an action mapping that I'm going to call view change. And with that, I'm actually going to set up the keyboard. So whenever I press the V key, it's going to change the view. So now that I've got an actual key binding, and if you're using a blank template with third-person character, that's fine. Just go into your third-person character, or whatever you have for your character, and you've got a whole series of stuff in here that, for those who know how to do blueprints or programming or whatever, it's easy to understand what's going on here. But if you don't know what's going on, then it's kind of tough. In this case, for what project I'm doing, this stuff right here is for virtual reality, and I'm not doing that. This is for gamepad input. Well, I'm not doing a gamepad, so I don't need that input at all. And this is for touch input, and I don't need it, so I'm not doing touchpad. So that cleans up everything that I've got in here to just this a little bit. So now to get the view to work the way that I want to, I've got to then say, okay, I want to change the view. So how do I do that? I have to tell the program that I want it to, whenever I hit the key, which is an input action, whenever I hit that V key, I want you to change my view. So, okay, I hit the V key. What do I need it to do? I need it to stop using the follow camera, and I needed to start using the first person camera, but we don't have one. So I'm actually going to go to the viewport. You can see this is our character, this is our camera. So I'm going to add a new component, which is going to be a camera. So with having an extra camera, I'm going to call this FPS Camera, so that I know that this is my first person camera and this is my original follow camera. But I'm going to grab a hold of it and I'm going to drag it up and make sure it's attached to my mesh so that it's attached to the body. And now as you see, it's there, and probably for the ladies in the group, you could probably relate to this, because guys are always thinking with the wrong part of their bodies, and this camera is just about in that right location. Well, we're not going to leave it there. So I want to make sure that it's attached to the character's head so I can make it look as though we're looking through the eyes of the character. So with the FPS camera selected, I'm going to look over here in my details panel, and I'm going to tell it the parent socket is going to be not the pelvis, but we want it attached to the head. And as soon as you do that, well, first off, it's made the camera turn sideways 90 degrees, and it's nowhere near in the correct location. So I want it to stop moving around, so I'm going to turn off real-time movement, and then I'm going to rotate the camera 90 degrees, and then I'm going to use my auto transform to actually move it, and I'm going to move the camera to a position that's more suitable. And to fine tune it a little bit, I'm going to bring it up to about right here, but I'm going to uncheck my snapping for moving stuff around so that I can actually move it up closer to eye level. So, and it's a little bit off to the side, so I can actually come over here, and if I want to try to do 0, 0, 0, so that I can clear out the other coordinates and then move it forward, usually about to here, which is 22. Let's actually go 25, and then we want to come up, and let's do it at a cool, clean 75. Nope, wrong. So, yeah, that looks about right. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and turn our real time back on so we can see our character moving around. We're only going to see the camera in this view. We're not going to see it when we're actually playing it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit compile and save. And just because I'm old and have lots of OCDs, I'm going to go into my editor preferences, and I'm going to type in the top block, type in autosave, and I'm going to turn off autosaves. The reason why I do that is I don't want it to constantly be saving. I want to be responsible for my own saving. I want to save myself. And you should too. So we're back to our event graph. So now we have to be literal on how we're telling it to do things. So whenever I press the V key to change my view, the first thing I'm going to need to do is I need to stop using the follow camera. So I want to deactivate the follow camera. Easy enough, right? And then once I've done that, and I'm actually going to try to be neat. And there's something about, you always want to be neat and organized whenever you're doing stuff. And actually, the one thing I want to do first, before I start telling it to turn cameras on and off, is whenever I press this button, I wanted to make it cycle back and forth. So I want to kind of flip-flop back and forth with what I'm doing. So I'm going to use a flip-flop node. Got to love the flip-flop. So now, whenever I press the key the first time, I'm going to deactivate the follow camera, and then I'm going to activate the FPS camera. And again, just to kind of clean things up, I'm going to drag them underneath here. And now I need to do the same thing. So whenever I press the button again, I want it to deactivate the capability of me spelling anything correctly today. So I want to deactivate the FPS camera, and then I want to activate the follow camera. So I want to turn this one back on. So why are you linked there? You are such an idiot. Stop doing that. You go to here, and you go to here. Why? Because Unreal Engine 4. We're going to blame it on that. We're not going to blame it on me, even though I probably did it. So, activate learning how to spell. So we want to activate the follow camera, and that's going to get us back into the original third-person camera. And if you need to, you could always change those names around so you know better what they are. So that's all there is to it. It's just to cycle the cameras. And we now go into our game and look. Now we're running around. We have this. And there's actually more to it than this, but I'm going to go ahead and hit the V key, and now we are looking through our camera, but I have no control over it. So, it's actually, we're going to hit it, cycle to it, and then hit it and cycle back. So we need to have a little bit of control of the camera to be able to look around. So it's pretty simple on that, as we go ahead and go to our FPS camera. And we want to make sure that we are using pawn control in the camera settings. So that's a good thing. Now, I'm going to show one more time, but there is one more step that we need to do to be able to get the control to look just right. So as now we're running around third person view, we hit this, but now we're looking at it ourselves. So we have control of the camera, but we're not affecting the character when we're actually looking through the camera. And this is one of the things where, now I'm back to normal, you're going to run into. You have to be really literal when you're creating components for these games. So how are you going to get that to work? Well, if I come up here to my third person character and I use the control rotation for my yaw, I'm just going to turn this on for right now, and I'll show you what that's going to do. And what that is now whenever I move my mouse around, I'm moving the character completely. Now that's going to work great for when we're in the first person view, because it's going to do what we need it to do. But whenever I go back to my third person, I don't really like that. I like being able to pan around and being able to see what my character looks like from the front, the back, and the side. So instead of forcing it to use this control rotation yaw, I'm going to tell it to do that in here in the blueprint so that I can turn that on and off as well. So whenever I go to my first person view, I want to set use controller rotation yaw, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that and paste that. So now whenever I'm actually going into my camera in first person view, I want to use that control rotation yaw. Whenever I go back to my third person camera, I want to turn that back off. So now when we go in and play our game, see, we're back to normal here. I can pan around, I can see myself. When I change my view, oh well, it's not doing what we want it to do. Everything has to be so literal on what you're doing that it has to be set up appropriately. So if you look on here, the use controller rotation yaw is set to false for the third person camera. And it's aggravating that you've got to sit here and go through every aspect of this, but it's necessary. And when you run into little issues like this, you've got to break it down to what part of that failed. And there's a lot of troubleshooting going on, and you're really going to have to break down each individual aspect of it. Well, whenever I went to my third first person view, it did not use the control rotation. Well, why didn't it? So occasionally it could be something as simple as, why not try it down right here? So set use controller rotation yaw. If we were to put it here, set that to true, and then again here and set it to false. Yeah, and it's if you look at the yaw, you're adding controller yaw input. I mean, you could do it this way as well, but what I've usually done is just done the set nodes on here. It's not an actual variable here in the variables panel. It's actually a hard-coded one. So I'll learn how to spell today. Use controller rotation yaw. We don't want it to use it whenever we're in the first person view. We only want it to come on when we're actually in the other view. So I mean, these are all the trials and tribulations that you run into. Trying to watch some of the chats here as well. I didn't activate it. That's what that does. Because what we're trying to do is controller rotation yaw. If I turn that on here and actually ran it, it's on automatically. So if I hit my view key, it's not going to change anything here. It's one of those things where right now I have not had near enough coffee, so. There's so many different things that you can do. Yeah, the flip-flop is, so when you press it the first time, it's going to make sure that you're not using the, it's going to set the controller rotation yaw to false, which is going to turn off the ability to circle around. And then whenever you hit V again, it's going to put the controller rotation yaw into a true state. And so it's essentially turning this one on and off here. Yeah, so the flip-flop mode node is just going to be, when I hit it one time, it does one thing. When I hit it the second time, it does something else. But you see some of the trials and tribulations of what you're doing. And something that I typically do 100 times will work perfectly the first time, and then the next time I do it, it just is not going to work at all. And I've used this node 100 times, and it's just going to be one of those things where it doesn't want to work because I'm live streaming. But we see that the everything is here. Oh, I know one thing that I did forget to do, and I'm going to blame... Who am I blaming? We're blaming Lexmark today. We blame him every day. So, one thing that I did forget to do is on my FPS camera, you need to turn off auto activate. We want to disable that by default. So that's one issue that I know that I forgot to do. So we still have the issue of that. We're using that, and I'm forgetting to put one particular node in there. The FPS camera itself is using pawn control rotation. It's one of those things where I have not had near enough coffee, so I'm always forgetting one little small thing here and there. And that's why whenever I first get up in the morning, I really don't want to get too involved in doing any heavy work on a project, because I'll end up getting frustrated because I miss out on something and I let it bother me too much, and I just get mad and want to walk away. Because with the camera boom is the invisible arm that holds the camera and helps point the rotation of things. All right, so we're gonna come back and revisit this one. And there's one thing I recommend also: if you're working on something and something is just being to the point where it's giving you a little error, sometimes it's just best to go ahead and not give up on it, but hold on for just a few minutes and then revisit it and come back to it. Because if you start getting frustrated, you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to continue with anything. So another thing that was brought up to me that can be potentially a pain in the butt to deal with is setting up conditions for something. And everything has to have a condition. And you can actually relate to some of this to actually real life, physical real life versus the game as well. Because I'm not going to use the same analogy I used with one of my guys earlier. You have to think of it as you're trying to be very literal with everything. I want to make this box do something, or I want my character to do something. Then I have to be very literal about it. I mean, little things like setting up timers. Like if you're going to configure a delay for something or a cooldown for something, you've got to know. You have to figure out what's going on. And just for giggles, we're going to come over here to, well, another little trick real quick, and then we'll move on to that. If you don't want your blueprints to be filled with all kinds of stuff that's complicated and hard to look at, you can actually come over here and highlight and select everything, and you can hit C and while you've got everything highlighted, and put a comment block around it, which is these big gray panels, which you can also, if you didn't know, you can click on that panel, come out to right here, and actually make it any color you want. But another thing that I like doing is to keep things clean. I come over here, grab all the content that I want in here. I'm going to right click on top of it, and then I'm going to collapse the node. And this is just my view changer stuff. And now it's all compacted in that little tiny box. Well, if I want that to be the way it is, then good. I can just shove this in a corner somewhere and forget about it. But what if I want to add something onto it, like a event begin play or an event tick, and I want to collapse part of that node series so it's a little less cluttered? Well, as you can see, it goes through here, but it doesn't connect to an output. So if you want an output, then all you have to do is just grab one of the executable pins or both of them and link it back out to here. Hit compile, save, and click event graph to bring you back. And now you have an output pin, so you can actually continue on with whatever you want to do there. So that's one of my nice little tips for keeping things clean. And you can start stacking things up and take up less room overall and really fill your blueprint in with 900 billion things that you don't necessarily always have to put in there. So for an example, what I'm going to do here is on event begin play, I'm going to create a countdown timer, and it's just going to display on the screen. And what I want to do is I want to print text. Well, what do I want it to print? I want it to print a number. So I'm going to drag this off here, and then I want it to count down, and I want it to count down to seconds. So I need to tell it what to put out there. So I'm going to just go ahead and create a variable, and I'm going to call this count down, and then I want to make this into a integer. Now basically, if you think about it, a boolean is yes or no. It's a true or false statement. A byte, well, it's an 8-bit number. An integer is a solid number, whereas a float is going to be like it's going to have a number with a decimal point. A name is a name. A string is a name, but it can be a name in numbers. Text is, well, just plain text. And then a vector is going to be a 3-dimensional location. Rotator or rotation is what direction you're looking. A transform can combine a vector and a rotation to set some other variables. But for right now, we just want to stick with an integer, so we just have a whole number. And then I want to go ahead and I want to get my countdown. I want to set my countdown. And you have to be descriptive whenever you're coming out with variable names, so you know what that variable actually does. You're usually asking it a true or false or a number or something like that, being literal. I want to set my countdown number to be the countdown minus. So I have the minus key, and it's going to be integer minus integer, and I'm going to say 1. And with that, I've got the ability now to tell it, okay, I want you to subtract 1, and then I want you to print that number. And now we want to create a delay. And with that delay, I want it to wait 1 second, which is going to be 1. Each whole number you put in here is going to be a complete second. And then I'm going to loop this back to my countdown. And then whenever I go in here to play, well, I didn't tell it what to print, so it's going to print hello. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it, okay, I want you to print this number. So I'm going to drag these out just a little bit, and I'm going to drag this pin to this pin. The colors don't match. But in some cases, you can convert something over to that so that you can print it that way. And if I wanted to be a little bit more different, I can actually tell it to change the text color to this lovely shade of red here. And I want it to stay up on the screen for 1 second, and then compile and save. So I'm subtracting. Well, I'm going into negative numbers. Well, why do you need a negative number? Well, if you want it to go in the opposite direction, or if you want it to count down from a number to a number, well, how do I do that? Well, you need to set a number in range, or you need to set a max, or there's so many different ways you can do it. But for this case, let's actually count down. We want to count down from 10, we'll say. So now we have to create a whole nother variable that's going to be origin, or origin, I can't type this morning. We want the original time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compile and save that. So now I have the original time is going to be 10 seconds. All right. Now I want to tell it to count down from 10. So instead of countdown here, I will take my original time and drag it off to that pin. So now it's going to take the original time, it's going to subtract 1, it's going to set my countdown, and it's going to print to text, and then 1 second later it's going to put out the new number. So there, 9. So we want to keep doing that, and it's going to keep counting down from 10. It's going to take the original time, subtract that, and we want it to now, instead, is trying to print that number. So we just need to move it over, and see how I mean that everything has to be so literal. So we've told it to set the countdown to this, but we actually want it to print the original time. Again, we have to complicate things so much, and yeah, life is always complicated. So I'm going to clear these out so we can actually get a better understanding of what we're actually doing. So this is just going to print text. It's going to wait a second, and then we're going to go back to our instructions again. So what we really need to do is we need to get our original time, and then we want to subtract 1 from that, and then we want to set our countdown time. Actually, we want to set our original time. So we'll set that to original time. So we're going to take our original time and we're going to subtract it by 1. And yes, we could have just taken our countdown time and made it to be 10. And then we're going to print out the original time then to reflect the new number. And then we want to loop back again. So we went from our countdown, which was just 0, and we told it to be 10 instead. So now we're going to loop back to here, and we want to print our time now, saying that it's 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and so forth. So you can, I don't know if you guys can see in the upper left-hand corner of the screen there, the numbers are actually counting down. It's kind of hard to see. Well, with setting up a timer, and with the question that I was asked to me earlier, is how do you set up a respawn timer or a timer in general? How do you make it to where you have a cooldown essentially? Well, we're using a print text here because it's cool and it shows us the number. And we don't need to print to text, and we don't need any of that. But let's say we want to set up a cooldown timer for an event. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just create a visual representation here. So I'm going to create a widget. Well, this is for other people too, not just one person. So I want to create a widget, and what I want it to do is I want it to print the numbers bigger so we can see it. You may not be able to see as clearly. Yes, I understand what your point is. I'm getting there. There's a method to every little bit of madness. Just relax. Get you a cup of coffee. You might need some decaf. But, okay, so we're going to make this widget blueprint, and I'm just going to put this as timer_W. I don't really care about the name of what we're creating on this. All I want to do is I want to print out some numbers. And I'm just going to throw this in the top center of the screen, make it right here. I want to grab my font, and let's make it 50. Nah, let's make it even bigger. Let's make it 100. I want it to be visible. Well, I can see we're going to do 800. Well, no, let's actually put down we want to do, let's start off with the text saying 10. Okay, so I'm going to take that 10 and I'm just going to resize the box a little bit so it's just whatever. It's going to be closed. We don't have to get 100% on an alignment for making it there. We just want it to be visible. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and anchor it to the top right, and I'm going to make this sucker be even bigger. Well, let's go 200. There we go. Let's make it really big and visible so we know exactly, we can see exactly what's going on here. So the point of what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this time right here, this number, and let this be our countdown timer. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our original time variable. And we're going to use the countdown, and we're going to go ahead and give it a value of 10 and compile and save. So it's there now. So what I want to do here is I want to create a binding so that I can make this number change to reflect our timer. So what I want to do is I want to get my text, I want to go to binding, create a binding, and then I want to drag these guys out here. I want to cast to the third person character because that's where that variable is being stored. And since it always has to have an object reference, so I'm going to do player character. So I want to get a copy of my player character reference while casting to my third person character. And third person character, I want to get my countdown. I want to get that countdown number, and then I want to display that countdown number here. So if I hit compile and save now, I can actually close my timer, and now what we want to do is we want to make that visible. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a widget, and then let's go ahead and tell it to display the timer widget. And for the owning player, it's going to need a player controller reference, so only you see this, or each person sees their own timer here. So I want to get player controller, I want to create the widget, and I want to add to viewport so that we can make it visible. So now, right, what we have is, We go into play. We have this big old number right there on the top right hand corner of the screen. Pretty much everybody should be able to see that. So we can actually make that number do what we want it to do. So since we have access to it, it's 10. So I'm going to do like we were doing here before, is I'm going to get my countdown. I want to subtract 1. And honestly, first, I want to go ahead and run a delay, just so we have time to get focus on it. So I'm going to set a delay timer of 2 seconds. And then we're going to get our countdown time. We're going to subtract the integer from the integer. So we're going to take 1 away from what the countdown currently is. And then we're going to set the countdown then to that. And then from there, we can run our delay of 1 second. Now, the one thing we're going to run into, now we're going to go ahead and loop this back to here. What's going to happen is it's going to count down from 10 all the way down to 0. Well, it's not going to stop at 0 because we didn't tell it to stop. So now we're going to have our delay, and then it's going to start counting down. But what's going to happen is when it reaches 0, it's going to start going into negative numbers because we didn't tell it to stop when it gets to 0. So what I'm going to do is I have to be more literal. Why didn't it stop at 0? It counted down. 0 is the bottom number. Well, no, it's not. We didn't tell it that it was going to be. So I'm actually going to delete my delay for right now, and then I'm going to do some more checking. I want to get my countdown, and I want to ask, is my countdown number, is that number less than or equal to 0 or equal to 0? I could do either way. And if it is equal to 0, well, how am I going to use that? Well, I have to have a branch node. So I'm going to hold the B key and left click, and it'll automatically create a branch node for us. Okay, so now I'm asking it, is the countdown number 0? If it is, then I want to go ahead and set my countdown number to 0. I don't want it to ever go below 0. So now I've actually told it to set that 0 is my bottom number. So it'll never go below 0 at this point. And yes, we're going to get on to the next part of it here. AI behavior trees, that's like asking me to, say, make a behavior tree for chat. It's not that difficult, but it's difficult to set up a behavior tree because you have to create a center and say, okay, you are the brain. But just like we're doing here, where we have to be really, really literal with every aspect of what we're doing, that's the same thing with the AI behavior tree. And yes, I'll get into some of that in other videos. But it's a complicated to explain process. And it counted down, so we want to make sure that we put in our delay back again. So we go back to our delay, set that to 1, and then with that delay we're now going to come all the way back to this node. So we see our number on the top right. See, again, this is one of those mornings where every little thing that I try to do is going to fail. So I just get used to it. This is like, whenever I get like this, then I just really, I'm not going to do any serious work until I actually can get my brain wrapped around things. So again, we have to break down what we're trying to do. At the end of my 2-second delay, I want to set my countdown to the countdown minus 1, and then I want to check to see if this number is now equal to 0, and if it is equal to 0, then I want it to pretty much just stop doing what it was doing. So I'm just gonna tell it to set my countdown to 0, and then run my delay. At some point, I'm going to make intentional errors because I want you guys to catch it and say, hey, you're doing this wrong. What am I doing wrong right now? You guys see what I'm doing wrong? Try to make mistakes so you guys can catch it here, so you can show me up on it. As we've taken the countdown timer, we've taken the countdown number, we've reduced it by 1, and we've set it to that new number, and then we're asking, is that number equal to 0? Because if we were to take this right here and remove that portion of it, like I was showing before, and then set the delay to 1 second and have it come back to this and run that, we take our number 10 and we start counting down. Welcome, Philip. Trying to engage the audience here and getting them to spot errors. They're pretty much like me this morning. I need more coffee, I guess. But for those who don't do game development and they're not involved in it and don't know anything about it, you see some of the trials and tribulations that some people end up having to go through. And everybody has their... yeah, I know. I was up for 22 hours yesterday, and I did 2 live streams yesterday. I was quite busy over those 22 hours, so coming up this morning, just wanted to just casually hang out with people, just talk about stuff in general, try to answer some questions about generalized creating elements for games, and realizing not just the actual parts of it, but what the thought process is, how you've got to be really, really literal about everything. So we need to make our countdown timer stop at 0. So another thing that we could possibly do is we can drag our delay off to the side a little bit here. We want to what can we do to make it stop at 0? Well, we've already asked it to run a branch. The members of, I'm sure you're referring to the development team. Oh God, it grows every day. I mean, we've got separate teams for separate projects. So I mean, if you're referring to Paragon stuff, then I just kind of redirect you back to last night's video. But you know, I want to get into covering any Paragon stuff. I've got several teams, and we've got over a dozen members of the team. So Alright, so again, we're asking, is this new number now equal to 0? That's what we're trying to find out. Now, if it is not equal to 0, let's actually look at this. We can take our delay. Whenever we're asking it, is it equal to 0? Yes. Then we want to set the countdown to 0. But if it is not, I mean, come on, guys. I left this mistake wide open for you guys to spot, hoping that you would catch it. Because now you take that false loop. Now we want to ask it, well, if it's not equal to 0, then we can take our delay and bring it back to here. So I left an open error here so you guys would catch it. And you didn't catch it, so I moved right along. So yeah, now it's going to count down, and once it reaches 0, it should stop at 0 and never print anything more than 0. So let's make it a little bit more interesting here too, since part of one of the issues was, yeah, dude, you need to be catching everything that I do wrong. So we've got this set up to where it now counts down to 0. Well, what do we want to do here? We want to, well, we don't have anything here. So animation wise, I don't really have any custom animations. So let's go ahead and see if there's any other animations I can pull from. So I'm going to grab the current animations here. You want to stop the animations, I realize that. So let's just do something stupid with our animations, and we're going to have him perform a jump animation, we'll say, and just be doing the jump loop animation. So to show kind of what that is here, I want to go ahead and let's figure out what we want to do. We want to make him do an animation. Howdy. So I'm going to get complicated and simple in the same way, and I'm going to create a custom event, and I'm going to call this doing dumb, not dung, but stuff. Doesn't matter what we're calling this, but we're going to create a custom event, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have that custom event tell it to play an animation, and I want to play animation, and it's going to refer to the mesh, and then I'm going to tell this dumb Manny here to play the third person jump loop, and we're going to set it to looping. Well, I'm not going to check it to looping just yet, but I'm going to go ahead and compile and save. So now we have a custom event to tell him to do this animation. Well, I want to create another one really quickly and do a custom event, and I'm going to say stop being stupid. So this is a stop event for an animation that we're going to create. So what I want to do is I want to create an animation class, or set animation class. And what this is going to do is I'm going to set it back to the third person animation blueprint. So I'm going to tell them to go back to doing your normal blueprint stuff whenever I tell you to stop being stupid. Oh, if this was only, yeah, if you could just do this in real life, just create a custom event, stop being stupid. Yeah, that would be lovely, wouldn't it? So you can just create a custom event based off of the event begin play when you go to school, or you go to work, or you go to the store, or whatever. And then whenever someone starts acting stupid, you can just create a custom event to tell them to stop being stupid. So I'm going to trigger this, but we're going to trigger this to kick in, and I'm going to go ahead and just keep pushing this guy off to the side here. I want the timer when it reaches 8 seconds to go ahead and trigger him to start doing this animation. So we could actually come over and do our view change. We can actually rip this out just to kind of give a demonstration of what I'm talking about here. But nah, I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm just gonna stay focused here on this, and we want to ask if the timer is at 5. So we've got our countdown timer, and we're going to keep doing our tick. So we're going to pick this stuff apart here so that we can do another version of this where we ask it if it was equal to 0. Well, we want to go ahead and do the same thing here, and we want to ask it, is the time for our countdown, and we'll get our countdown timer, is it equal to 5? If it is equal to 5, we're actually going to break this link right here because we want this to work off of the faults to go back to running our delay. So if it is equal to 5, then we want it to do dumb stuff, right? So I'm going to say true, do dumb stuff. So it's going to then start doing this animation. Let's go ahead and take a look at this really quickly, and so we know that it should keep doing the timer, but whenever it reaches 5, it's going to change my animation. So now I'm doing the animation. I can sit here and float around doing this dumb stuff, but you see that the timer stopped at 5. So we're going to have to be even more literal, because now at this point we want to loop back into the delay. So let's include that into there. We want to keep doing the countdown timer. You see how literal things are? So now as we're going through here, and I hit 5, and now I'm doing dumb stuff. Well, it reaches 0. I want to stop doing dumb stuff when it reaches 0. So if it's equal to 0, set the countdown to 0, and then I want you to stop being stupid. See where I'm going with this, guys? Come on, the dude in purple. You see where I'm going with this? So now he's doing something stupid, so we want him to stop being stupid. So now when it hits 0, we're back to our original animation, and we're good to go. So we stopped being stupid. You see how easy that was? Come on. We just have to keep asking our questions as we're putting things down of what we're doing. So it was just that simple to come up with a basic cooldown system to do animation stuff. Recall back to do something simple. Well, that's essentially what we did. Is we told it to, if it's doing an animation, the stupid stuff that it was doing, whenever it hits 5 on my countdown, it's going to start doing an animation. It is performing an animation, but at the end of that, I want it to stop doing that animation and go back to the regular ones. If you're trying to do that with vectors, well, what if well, there's a big difference between a vector and a float. So if you're trying to change the vector, like if you're trying to, no, this is not part of the Paragon tutorial. This is not part of the COG tutorial. This is just general banter, just hanging out, having coffee with beef, and just asking little general questions on fixing elements and understanding and wrapping your head around the basics of what it's like to create a game and what you've got to do. not everybody wants to create a video game, but not everybody understands is, well, make it do this, make your game do that, and then why can't we do this? Well, you have to get an understanding of how things are actually being done and how the game engine lets the game do what it's doing. It needs to receive lots and lots of input and lots of variables and lots of different information. It has to have all this information to work from. Just like with what we're doing in this little example here. I'm missing out on what you're saying here, dude. Is your problem was you were trying to get it to stop doing an animation after a cooldown, or if you're in the middle of a cooldown, you want to do that. And the basic principle of what this example I'm doing right now is, when my timer gets to 5, it performs an animation. Well, yes, I'm extending that animation, not letting it continue until I tell it to. And it's no different than if you know that an animation is going to take 5 seconds to perform, then you want to go ahead and set your delay timer to run for those 5 seconds. I know what you did, but I'm just trying to get you to grasp the concept of being overly literal with every aspect of it. An animation, you want it to perform an animation, and if the animation takes 3.444445 seconds, you need to set your variable timer for your delay to be that. Yeah, an ability, setting up the ability, and for if it's the ability is to cast a spell, then you're talking about float is not one do cooldown. I'm using it in my example. The cooldown is just an arbitrary name. It's a number given to, or a name given to a number. I've set mine to be 10 so that it starts the countdown timer at 10, and I'm telling it to keep going down till it reaches 0. But I'm grabbing it in between there as an example, like when it hits 5 seconds, I want you to perform this. If you want a cooldown, let's actually go through here, and I'm going to delete every single bit of this stuff right here, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently. So we know that we still have our basic stuff here of do something dumb or do dumb stuff. It's going to tell it to do that one animation, and then I got another custom event that I can call upon that says stop being stupid. So I want him to stop doing his dumb stuff. So the delay right here is just for pausing before the timer. We want to not count down until we're in the game comfortable. It's no different if you're doing it with, if you're doing time-based, you want to use an integer, not a float. A float has a number with a decimal point and can go below the 0 in decimal points as well. So if you're doing a countdown timer for a delay, I would recommend you stick with integers. You don't have to, but you're wasting the decimal point and the extra numbers that are just not needed unless you're breaking down your delay in milliseconds. If you want your delay to last for 155.33 or 22568 seconds, then yes, you can use an integer, a float instead of an integer. But if you're doing a normal timer, then reason why I'm using an integer here is I'm using whole numbers. I'm using whole seconds. I'm using that as a whole second timer for a clock ticking every 1 second. If your animation, and if you look at the animation, the jump loop, it's 7/10 of a second. Yeah, triggering an explosion. I don't actually have one here, so what I can do is add new, and I can add features and content. I want to add the starter content, and that'll give me an explosion. It'll give me a sound for the explosion, the particle effects for it, and do that. And I can trigger a button to make it do the explosion anytime I want to. So by adding that starter content in, I don't usually add starter content into a project that I'm going to package for sending out to people, but this is just an in-house screw around template. So it's going to give me the explosion cue and a particle effect for doing that. So my original delay, I'm going to put at 3, so that when we first go into the game, we have a pause. Stopping the animation can simply be done with what I've done here with stop being stupid. I just tell it to go back to its normal animation system. And if you're just trying to play a quick animation, then you can actually put that all in here. You can tell it to do the animation, and then you can add a delay. And then after your delay of 1 second or 10 seconds or whatever, then you can tell it to you can then resume your regular animations by setting your animation instance class back to your third person or whatever your animation blueprint currently is. So I can ignore stop being stupid, and if I just want to trigger this only, after 3 seconds of being in the game, I can just run a custom event script from there, do dumb, or what did I call it? Doing dumb stuff. So I can now run that after 3 seconds of being in the game. It's going to play this animation, and I'm going to change the timer to 5 seconds, just so you can over exaggerate it to see that it's actually doing that. So now whenever I play, it's going to wait a couple seconds, and then it's going to do that animation, and then after a few seconds it's going to finish the animation, then it's going to go back to a normal animation system. The custom event allows you to create an element. I can create all this information, and then I can call that custom event anytime I want. So I can tell it to start doing dumb stuff anytime I want to by just right clicking and say doing dumb stuff. I can, just that easy, I can tell it to play this animation, and then after it's finished doing the animation of the delay time, then I want it to go back to the normal animation instance. So yeah, that's a quick way to call an animation. If I want to, instead of say doing dumb stuff, I want to do an ability like cast a fireball. Then whenever I call on this individual executable here, at this point, do this animation, or do this, cast a spell. And just the same in this same sequence right here, you're going to have it do an animation. You can break that, and I'm using 5 seconds as an over exaggeration, but during those 5 seconds when we're doing dumb stuff, then we can actually go ahead and add in some other factors. Like, I want, whenever I'm doing dumb stuff, I want to play sound at location, and I'm going to use the explosion cue because it's going to play a random explosion sound, and I'm telling it to get it at a location. Well, I can grab the reference to my mesh, and I can bring it down here, and I can get my world location and then connect that into here. So now I also, because I'm going to need that location here in just a second, and I want to spawn emitter at location. Again, I'm going to grab reference to that location, and then in the process of doing stuff, we're going to play an explosion sound, and we're going to spawn an explosion emitter. And I want it to be big, so I'm going to make it 5 times bigger. So now whenever I'm doing dumb stuff, which is this guy right here, after I begin playing the game, I'm going to show my timer up on the screen. I'm going to wait 3 seconds, and then I'm going to do something dumb. Story of my life. It usually doesn't take me 3 seconds to do something dumb, though. Bang! We did the explosion, we had the sound, and then we stopped doing things. It's no different than, you know, anything else. It's just a matter of being literal with how you're doing things. But what the cool fact is, you can make it as a custom event, and then call that custom event anytime you want to. So let's go ahead and change the delay for the time that we're doing that dumb animation of the jump animation to 1 second, and then we're going to go there. But if anytime we need to break it and stop doing that, we can tell it with our one we just called stop doing dumb stuff. Now, bang, and it goes back to doing its thing. So it just, there was an event. It kind of, you were there, and you saw that it did an animation, and then it resumed back to normal animation. And we triggered that by actually saying we're going to do that. I mean, I can even take it a step farther, and our view changer stuff, we don't want to do the view changer anymore. We're going to take that V key that we already have, and I'm going to tell it to start doing dumb stuff. And just that easy, I've just grabbed that that V key that we already had bound, and now anytime we want, we can trigger that event. So as I'm running around, whatever context that I want, if I want a left mouse button and boom, and do it, I can trigger that event anytime that I want to now, just with putting in that custom event for do dumb stuff, or whatever I want that to be called. What you think? This is a totally useless thing that I'm doing right here. It's just meant for breaking down and creating the thought process for making something work. How did I get a song to play, but only when you press it? There's a couple things that I always failed to do, is being able to stop playing it. But you want a song, like a long song and music to play, or just a sound to play? Because whenever I did, to get that sound to play, all I did was, and it's the same if you want to play music as well, but I want to play sound at location. And that play sound at location means that if I give it a specific location, then it's going to play it there. It's not going to have any, like a media player, it's a little different. Typically, Unreal Engine 4 is only going to use 16-bit wave audio. And you're going to end up, I know it's terrible, but you're going to end up converting all your stuff over to 16-bit wave files. And it's not horrible, but it's not really the most optimized way of doing things. But there is ways of adding media, a media player into Unreal Engine 4. You can bring in Windows media files, like WMA files. I've actually brought in actual MP4 video and had it display on a projected screen, like a television screen. If you go back to my videos, I've got a video a while back that's actually where I created a movie theater, a cheap one, cheesy one, but what it was is I had a panel up against a wall, and not only could I have it play at begin play, but I also can create a menu that whenever I hit a key, like the V key or whatever, I hit that key and it gives me a menu, and I can select which video that I want to watch from a list, and I can scroll through that list of videos. However, those videos actually have to physically be inside the game's files, which can make it a little bit on the large side. So I figured out that I could actually take and create a widget and display it wherever I wanted to and link YouTube videos in it. And I actually showed a comparison where I had on one screen I had an actual video being played from the game's files, And then I had another screen set up that was actually streaming a YouTube video on command. All I had to do was, and I actually created a text entry block where when you typed in the name or the URL for the video you wanted to play, it actually began playing it there, and it played it on that that actual screen that I had set up, which was no more than just a widget. And honestly, you can create a widget and insert a widget into your scene. So when you're creating something like a media player, you can have it displayed. And if you make, I'm going to try to use this timer widget just as an example, just because I have a widget created already. You create a blueprint actor, and then I'm just going to call this time widget, whatever. I'm not really worried about the name of it. But inside there, you go to your components, and you can set it up as a render target. It's probably the best way to do it, on a plane or on a cube or something like that. If you're following what I'm saying, is you have to have it to project to something. You can actually have a media sound. There's ways of implementing that in here in the blueprint as well. You have let's see, media plane. So you can insert a media plane. It's a 2D plane that you can have rendered so it's always facing the camera, and then you can apply something directly to that. I mean, you got your typical text render if you just want to display numbers or text floating on the screen. But if you're trying to do a media player, then you're going to want to do a widget. And so like right now, I've just inserted a widget into my components, and I need to actually make it the widget of timer W. And now, as you can see, I've got the numbers right there. That's my widget. That's all I had in that widget, was just displaying those numbers. But now I can actually insert that widget into the screen, or into the scene here. And I'm just going to drag it and drop it in. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate it around so I can see it in the right direction. And I'm going to throw it up here on the wall, so we can go into the map and we can see that we've got that widget is displaying up there. I forgot I was going to do that here. And we can actually now control that widget and showing the display up there. Whatever you can put in a widget, you can have display into a scene like this. So I'm actually going to go into my third person character, and I'm going to stop doing dumb stuff. I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to go back into my timer again, so I can actually change those numbers on the screen. So again, we have to ask ourselves what we're doing here. I want to get my countdown numbers. Oh goody, my internet's going to be stupid. Can I set a variable to stop doing dumb stuff for my internet? Alright, yeah, I don't know what that was. My internet decided to be stupid there. So, just briefly, I'm going to try to quickly run back through the countdown timer again, so we can see that I'm actually displaying a widget on the screen. So again, I'm getting my countdown, I'm subtracting 1, and then I'm resetting my countdown to that, and then I want to go ahead and run a branch. I'm going to try to do this as quickly as I can here. So run a branch. I want to get, is it equal to 0? If it is, then we can do something. But if it is not equal to 0, well, if it is equal to 0, I want to go ahead and set my countdown to 0 and leave it at that. But if it is not at 0, I want to then, if it is not, then I want it to delay by 1 second, and go back to here. Yeah, no kidding. 4.19 has got so many little tiny bugs, it's annoying as crap. Little things that break that didn't break before. Or you can see we've got our widget displaying on the actual screen up there. And that widget will be no different than if it was my countdown timer widget, or if I created a widget that actually displayed a YouTube video or whatever else. When you're setting up an actual video, it takes a little bit more setup to actually do it. If I get time later, I'll actually try to get a tutorial out on that, but I don't know how much time I'm going to have on it. I'm going to go ahead and just create another widget, just something to goof around with. And I'm just going to call this test_W. And then inside your widget, anything you can put into a widget, you can have displayed in your scene, like I did the numbers on the wall there. So if you want to display an image, or you got special effects like background blur, user created, so you can I could actually throw that same countdown timer in right here, and it's going to do the same thing. It's going to pull those numbers in, and I'll set that anchor to the top right hand corner of the screen, just throwing random junk in here just so you can get the idea of what you can do. You got inputs, what's a spin box, extras, panels, primitives. You can build your widget however you want, and then just like I showed, you can actually put that into your scene. Got throbber, you can have this little throbbing doohickey. I'm not going to put that in there, but you can put that in there. A menu anchor, anything. And creating widgets, your brain can just go wild with doing whatever you want with it, but try to remember what the actual process of what you were trying to do was. And if you're going to put in a video, you're going to want to put in an image, and then you're going to want to use that image as going to display a render target. So if you want to learn how to do that, I would suggest looking up other videos online using render targets, because you can, if I wanted to do it, I could take and create a render target that is a camera that's being displayed on my character. So if you're looking at like your viewport, you can actually have a camera displaying your character, looking at it in this view. You can create a render target and actually now project your image of your character up on the wall doing an animation. There's so much you can do with widgets. It's crazy. And with render targets and so forth. But on this little test widget, I just want to create something else just to show what I'm actually doing. I'm going to get rid of the image here. Now, I'm going to put a button in here. The button's not actually going to do anything, but it'll show up on where I'm displaying this widget. And I'm just going to put a couple of them in here just so it's something to look at. Now, there is also a way that you can create these widgets and put buttons up here and actually use these buttons. Essentially, by looking at the buttons, you then, like if you've got a crosshair set up, you can actually utilize your widget control by actually accessing these buttons that are floating in the air, or interesting. I'm going to get rid of the timer out of there because it doesn't like that one in there for right now. But I've got just 3 buttons right here. You could put image. And this is also a cheesy way if you just want to throw a. If you watch, I got the 10 up there. I'm going to go back into my blueprint for the character or this actor here that I created. I'm going to change the widget class to test W. If we look at our viewport, and where is it? Let's see. It's not going to show the buttons there. But you can actually create an interface that you can plant on a wall and then actually go over and use that widget. I'm not doing any more Paragon tutorial series. I thought I've made that perfectly clear. And that's not what this video is about. So if you have general questions, then yeah, I'm going to talk about general aspects of creating stuff, but I'm not going to talk about Paragon in this broadcast. This is not what this broadcast is about. So I'm just going to put like widget item in here, and I'm just going to make my text a little bit bigger. I'm not trying to be rude about that, but the point of this video is just letting people come in and just ask generalized questions and helping people to comprehend and explain how to wrap your head around the basics of creating a game. Alright, so that's good there. That's good enough. I'm just going to go ahead and line this top center. There we go. Good enough. Yikes. It's only showing 3 letters there. So I'm going to actually pull it away from the wall. But you get the idea here is you can incorporate widgets. Because the draw size is too small. Yeah, so I'll have to actually increase that draw size so that I can fit all of it in there. So you really, like I said, as long as you base what you're trying to do and think about it with a little bit of logic and common sense, you can break down just about any problem and you'll come up with a solution on how to fix those problems. Yeah, I never created chapter 3, that's why there isn't one. You guys got any other just generalized questions? Let's say whenever the whole point of this was just kind of hanging out, having coffee, chit-chatting with the community, and looking at questions and answering questions, and not being specific towards any one particular project. I want you guys to know that with the Paragon project that's going on, anytime you've got any questions that are related to that primarily, I would suggest you go to the Brain Dead Games Discord and check in there. My YouTube videos that I'm going to be doing for like Sunday services or other broadcasts throughout the week, they're not going to be unless they're announced to be on that Discord channel about that project. They're not going to be. I mean, if I want to make a Paragon video, then I'm actually going to go ahead and let them announce that there's going to be a Paragon video. But the other streams that are on here, they're a way for you guys to come in and just get to know me and ask generalized questions about gaming in general or whatever the topic is for that particular video. So I don't want to get hung up on one specific game at a time. I just want guys and gals to understand that if you're trying to ask whether it's the Paragon stuff or any game related, why can't the developers do this? Well, sometimes it's not really that simple, and sometimes really got to go around your butthole to get to your elbow. You see the problems that I ran into just trying to get the countdown timer. And now I knew how to do the countdown timer, but all the little aspects involved in just getting a countdown timer. And again, if I can go back in here and change that countdown timer on my widget that's displayed here, it's change that back. So this right there, just to get a number displayed on the screen that's on the wall up here, and you see it's floating. It's actually invisible on one side. So if I wanted to, I could actually move it closer to the wall and actually make it look like it's on the wall. So if you wanted an effect where there is a active video or animated whatever playing on the screen, you could actually do that by setting up a widget that displays on the screen, just like that. I mean, whether it's a video, if it's a countdown number, an animated image, or whatever, you could actually run an actual YouTube video broadcasting and displaying on there. It's like my movie theater video that I did. You could actually create a movie theater where you could have your players come into your game, walk into a movie theater, and whenever they get next to a chair, you can set up a box collision to say, to sit down, press E or whatever, and your character can then do an animation and sit down in the chair, and now you can sit there and look at the theater screen, and you can have a TV sitting in your living room of your whatever, and set up a remote control where you can change videos. Or there's so many possibilities that you can do, and all you have to do is take the time to break down each individual problem into its individual components and say, I want you to do this. Well, you're going to have to create all the variables that you need to make that a reality. So you have to know little things like, if I want my character to jump, well, do I want him to be able to jump while he's standing still? Do I want him to be able to jump while he's running? What are the conditions for me to tell him to jump? If I'm going to really slow, can he jump? Or does he have to be going a certain speed? You need to give it a series of variables to tell it when can you start jumping, when can you stop jumping, what animation to play when you start jumping, what animation to play while you're in the air, what animation to play when you actually land on the ground. So there's 3 base animations just for a jump, or you could just have a simple one-time jump animation, which is also in the animation starter pack, has a single jump animation where you can just hit it, it does a jump animation, and it's over. But doing with this method right here, if you want to be able to say, well, it's nice that you can jump this high, but I don't want my character to jump that high. That's not realistic. Not everybody can do a standing vertical jump like that and land on something that high. So you could actually go into your third-person character and change that. You can go to your character movement, and you've got like your jump velocity. You've got a lot of things you can do to affect your character. And let's say if you set your jump velocity to 250 and then went back into the game and tested your jump, your jump is much lower now. Now your character is not going to be able to jump over it. Widgets are a way of making a menu. My main menu for my games that I do is a widget, and all you have to do is just tell it when to display it and bring it up on your screen. Like the 0 that you see floating in the screen right now, what if I just wanted to create a crosshair instead of having that widget up there? I'm going to go in here and I'm going to leave this timer information just simply because it's there. But if I wanted to create, say, a crosshair, essentially, like right now, I'm telling it on event begin play, I want you to start playing the timer widget and add that to my viewport. And that's all you have to do to tell it to bring up that widget while you're in the game. But if you want it to come out whenever you first create the game, and you go in to start playing and you want a menu that you can navigate to, it's essentially the same thing. On event begin play, create this widget. But what you could do is when you create that widget, and I'll create a crosshair widget really quickly just to kind of show you a cheese way of doing it versus an actual way of doing it. The actual way is just to create an image and add the image to the scene. So with that widget, now anything that I put on here is going to be displayed whenever I tell it to create that widget. For this particular case, I'm going to create a little cheesy crosshair, and I can grab an image, and I want that image to be in the dead center, but at first I'm going to go ahead and set the size to be 40 by 40. Well, no, that's not going to work. Well, I want the X size to be 10. Let's actually make it 5. Make it a little bit thinner. So now it's 5 by 40. Well, I want to create another image, and I want it to be 40 by 5. So now I have a horizontal and a vertical, and if I want to combine those into the right locations, then I can grab my first image and I'm going to anchor it to the center, and then I'm going to grab my second image and anchor it to the center, and then I'm going to create the location where I need it to be. Now if you just give their position 0 and 0 and then did that for both of them, well, that's what you end up with. Well, that's not a crosshair, that's like a carrot. So what you can do to make sure that your fake crosshair is in dead center, your X size is 40, so I want to make this -20. That's cool. So now my other image, the X size is, oh, I'm on the wrong one here. The Y size is 40, but my X is 5, so I could do -2.5 so that it's centered up that way, and then I can do -20. And I do that with both of them. I know you can't see it because of the thing in the way here, but you see how it's still just not right. So I want to come back up here to this, and it's -2.5. You're just getting half. Half of 40 is 20. Half of 5 is 2.5. So now we actually have a crosshair that's going to display dead center in the middle of our screen. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. And instead of showing my timer widget there, I'm actually going to go ahead and show my crosshair widget. Hit compile, save, and now when we first start playing, we have a crosshair in the center of the screen. Of course, it's not going to work all that great because, you know, you're not in first person view. But with the jump stuff, then, well, I don't want to have that little weak jump. Can't do anything with it. Well, let's go ahead and give it 2,500 instead. Oh, not 25,000. You can increase that and set it to where, okay, now when I jump, whoa, there you go. So yeah, that's a little bit too much, but you can make adjustments to your character. I'm going to put it back to 600 and save that. Honestly, if you can think it, there's a good chance you could probably do it with Unreal Engine. And I'm really thankful to Epic Games for getting us a good platform to work with. Blueprint or visual scripting, I like doing it for videos because it lets you physically see what I'm doing. I'm sorry, watching somebody do C++ or actual programming is about as much fun as watching paint dry. I'd much rather watch paint dry, actually. It's boring to watch, but here you can see, you can see all the little different variables of things that's going on. You can kind of wrap your head around it a little bit better where you can physically see things. So, and the best way to start doing stuff is there's times where I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and somebody asks me, well, how can you do this? I don't have a clue. But instead of saying I don't know what I'm doing, well, crap, let's figure it out together. if you're using Discord, we can share screens and we look back and forth and like, well, what happens if you do this? And the biggest thing is find you an empty spot of a blueprint and right click and experiment. Find things. Actor tab. You get actor eyes viewpoint. Okay, well, if you know where that is, you can use that as a reference to doing that. Is child actor, get parent component. There's so many different things that are in that to really just spend some time going through it. Audio, add audio curve source component, or camera, add camera component. There's so many things you can do, and it's limited by your imagination on a lot of it. Not to actually modify the blueprint C++ code. If you want to do that, you're going to actually have to code it. And when creating a project, you need to just to quickly look. When you go to create a new project, instead of selecting blueprint, you need to select C++. And you can still do third person. You can do the same examples, but you're going to be doing the coding instead of actually having the visual scripting. You can combine both together, but yeah. I like doing regular blueprints because it's more interesting to watch and it's easier to work with, and for a new developer. Yeah, I mean, you get camera stuff. You can grab a camera and then maybe add a post-process effect or a blur effect or something like that. To modify your camera. So if your character gets hit over the head, you can blur their vision. Whatever you can think of, you can do it, but you've got to just sit there and say, how do I get it to do it? You have to break down those elements one at a time and just do it. I mean, you can figure it out. Fix opening the new window. Like when you create something and you open up the file, you're talking about going up to the tabs up here versus going to a new window, or see, I can do like this and I can drag it off screen and put it on another monitor. But if you want it to come up as a new tab every time, you just have to go to Edit, Editor Preferences, and Asset Editor Open Location is always going to be set to default. You can select into a new window, the main menu, the content browser, and you can make your selections there. Like if you want to go to the main window. And unfortunately, thank you 4.19, you have to do this every project you open up. So it's not like you can set this one time and it's always going to work. I do this, I close this project, I go into another project, and I got to keep doing this. It's not really that big of a deal whenever you're on a single monitor. It's okay, you can kind of make do with it. But while I was running 5760 by 1080, every time I would open up a new project, I'd open up a blueprint, and blam, it's plastered on all three monitors at one time. And I'm running three 32-inch monitors, so that's almost 7 foot of real estate. So now my blueprint is 7 feet wide, and it really just torqued my little... Yeah, it just really annoyed the crap out of me. And I would actually have to go in there, and every time I'd open up a new project, and it would save it for that project, but every single time I go into a new project, I have to go into my editor preferences and change that one thing. So, the other thing that I do is in the editor preferences is autosave. I always disable where it says enable autosave. I always turn that off. I am the autosave. I'm always going to hit over there on that save all button and save current button on my own. I'm used to, prior to this computer here, having a potato that might lock up or fail at any given time. So I'm always working on stuff. I get in the habit of saving frequently. Yeah, it does kind of suck having to reset it every single solitary time, but doing it right there by going through your editor preferences, at least for right now, in 4.19, you can actually do it and it remembers it for that project. You just got to remember to do it for each project every time you open up a new one. You know, there's. I keep reinforcing with the guys on my team when they. I love you guys. I promise. I love you guys. I do. The guys on my team, but every time you have a problem with a blueprint, it's not that I don't care, but I don't care. Not really, but it's just a matter of. It's always something stupid that you're doing wrong. I do stupid things every day, all day. I'm an idiot. So when you have a problem, if something's not working, excuse me, just stop for a minute. Take a deep breath. Analyze the situation. If all else fails, and you're just running into a dead end on something like play animation, or where is it breaking? I know this is actually working. All else fails. If there's a breakdown somewhere and you don't know where it is, go from a section like right here. Why is it not going from the sound to the emitter? It is, but all you have to do is just drag off from here, and it can be over exaggerated. You're trying to do something here. Print text, and it's going to put a print text here and say play sound going to spawn emitter. You say, okay, I'm going from this to this, and you want to verify whether or not it's doing that or not, to compile and save, and then when you go into play, whenever it gets to that point, it's going to print that text on the screen to let you know whether or not that's actually there or not. Alright, I didn't have it set correctly here, but whenever it goes from the play sound to the spawn emitter, I want the display for 20 seconds. And I want the text color to be red. Here's another little tip. If you're going to constantly be using the same color, if you've got some really cool color you like using for your print text or for your whatever, grab that color right there, drag it, and drop it up here, and now it's there. So if you ever want to come back in to change your color again, all you have to do is click there, and you're using the same color that you used before. Oh wait, I stop doing dumb stuff. So that was a poor example of where to actually put it, because I don't have that one in there anymore. Actually, I do. Sorry. I have it bound to the V key, so I'll leave that connected. So now as we're going through here, if I hit the V key, you can see it prints up in the top left corner of the screen, play sound going to spawn emitter. So you can put this print text in between nodes. If you're not sure if it's breaking or where it's breaking, then you can just sit there and enter that in, and when you get done, you just break the links and reconnect your two original nodes back together again. And if you need to move it around to say, okay, well, is it breaking here after the delay or before the delay? Just change your text to say whatever you want it to say, and then insert it in between the two nodes, and you can use it to help troubleshoot. When in doubt, print text. And if you can't figure out something, you probably don't have enough variables. Get used to making variables for things. But I like using the custom events. And getting back to these guys, I love using custom events. And again, with this, we know that this system here works. It's lovely, but it's taking up too much room. So I'm going to select every bit of it. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to collapse to function. No, excuse me, I'm going to collapse to a node. So I'm going to collapse that down here, and I'm just going to say dumb stuff. So now I can just collapse it all down, shove it up there, and it takes up so much less space. And I can do the same thing here, even if it's something that small. I can still say reset animation. So anytime I want to reset your player's animation, I can create this right here, and I can tell them to stop being stupid. And anytime I want them to do that, I can just come into somewhere and say, stop being stupid, or whatever the actual thing is called. It's so easy to use these custom events that allows you to quickly put in an animation or something like that. I looped what backwards? But yeah, all I was trying to do there was actually create a symbol system where you could actually do the countdown, do the animation, do the whatever, and it was just creating a simple system there. I wasn't trying to be 100% great. Is there a way to reverse the collapse if you don't want it? Well, I mean, all you have to do normally is just go into it and double click and then be able to access it, and then go back to this. You can expand nodes and open it back up. Just like that. I mean, you go to right click, collapse nodes, and then again rename it. But if you don't want it, I would say, just like you saw, is drag it out to where you got some room to make it easier, and then go ahead and spread out. Come on, you turd, get over there. Stretch it out, and then select it, right click on it, and expand node, and you've just brought it back to the way it was before. So yeah, it's easy. So I like it collapsed. So error. What? Why are you trying to be an error on me? Oh. Yeah. I'm trying to call it the same thing that I had before. So collapse nodes. You could collapse it to a function and call it the same way, but since what we're doing here is a custom event, I mean, if you wanted to take something like all this stuff right here, you could actually take that, collapse it to a function, and now you have a function over here. You can just drag that function in, but doing a custom event's pretty much the same thing. Well, it really is the same thing. So like that, I mean, I can sit there and shrink all this stuff down to nothing, and then as I needed to do, like this right here, I can grab this and I can say collapse nodes and call that my begin play, and then just drag it over here. And if you wanted to have complete OCD cleanliness and everything else, your blueprint could look like that. Your entire blueprint could just be a series of these guys. And then if you wanted to go in and say, okay, I want to edit the begin play, you could drag it to an open area, blam, open it up, edit it, or you can keep it collapsed and you can just do that and go in, do your work, you get done, you click back on event graph, you're back out of it again. It's like this on my view changes. I don't have to convert that over because it's, well, there. It's just the input action view change and all of this stuff, the do dumb stuff. This is actually the executable reference of this right here. So you could clean it up between these guys and these guys. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could actually combine it even more, but this is usually good enough. Say if you wanted to create a comment around them, you select stuff, hit C, and then type in whatever your comment is. Dumb stuff from begin play. And then while you've got that selected, or you can come back and grab the top bar, we're going to change the color to orange, and yep, that's lovely. And now you can just grab this top bar and drag it wherever you want to go, and yeah. The red one, what is the port you don't use? What is the port you don't use in custom events? Oh, you're talking about this red one up here. This is an output delegate. You can actually utilize that for some other stuff. If you're trying to bring out right here, you can add other heavy references. I'll have to get into that into a different day on this one, but it's for like hardcore linking into certain aspects. I'm gonna close up the live stream here in about 5 minutes, because that'll make 2 hours of streaming, and got to go feed mother, make everybody happy. You can't make everybody happy all the time, but like I said, today's whole thing was, trying to make some sense out of some goofy stuff, streamlining, getting your head wrapped around the thought process of resolving issues, things like that, blueprint organization, and like I said, whenever you start having a problem when you're trying to create something for a game, don't let it beat you up. Stop, get up, walk away for a couple minutes, and just think about what it is you're trying to do. And remember, you have to be literal about everything. You actually have to make sure that you're telling it to do everything, like my widget displaying on the wall doing a countdown timer. You have to make sure that you know that you've got to tell it, and welcome from the Belarus. Beautiful area, beautiful area. Yeah, you have to be literal about everything. It's like my crosshair widget. I'm looking at my belly button. If I don't want to look at it from there, I want to change my view from my camera. All I got to do is my third-person character. If I just want to change to, say, grab my follow camera, and I can drag it over to the right a little bit farther back, and a little bit up. What I'm going to do is save and play. And now I'm farther back, and I'm off to the side. I can now utilize my crosshair in the center of the screen, and everything's good to go. Break down your problems. Don't let them beat you. Analyze. Just think about, have I got enough variables? Because you probably don't. Did I do this? Did I do that? Don't, think positive about it. Think of the fact that you're talking to an idiot when you're talking to Unreal Engine 4. I don't mean that in a bad way. It doesn't know how to do anything unless you tell it how to do it. It needs to know all the variables that go into effect to make it work the way you want it to work. So just back up, think of the details, make the details work, and you're good. If you get stumped on something, there's so many good communities that are out there that help players to do certain things, but do not be afraid to go into a brand new project, open up that blueprint, get in that event graph, find you an empty spot, zoom your butt in, right click, and experiment with all this stuff that you can do, all these actions for this blueprint. There's a bunch of stuff that you can look through. I'm sure there's some way that you can make all these different things work to make your thing work. See, when you get mad at something, don't let it beat you up. Stop, back up, say, what do I want this thing to do? And then remember that you have to almost overanalyze each individual aspect of that. So you need to say, I'm going to make my character jump. Just like my do dumb stuff thing that I did as a demonstration. What do I want to do? I want to play an animation, but after a certain amount of time, I want to stop doing the animation. I want to spawn an emitter. I want to play a sound. I want to give it a location. I have to break down all those little aspects of it, and I got to make them there. I got to put them there. If something is not working, it's because you forgot to tell it how to do it. Alrighty, with that being said, the timer has run down to 0, and we are done with the Sunday services with Beefalo Bart. And I hope you enjoyed this little get-together, and hope to see you soon. And y'all take care. I'll see you later.